The sun burned low over the jagged ridges of the Sierra Madre, spilling copper and crimson across the endless desert. Heat shimmered above the sagebrush flats, and the dry wind carried the taste of grit with every breath. Ethan McGraw, a rancher hardened by years of labor under the pitiless western sky, tugged on his reins as his horse stumbled. "Easy, boy," Ethan muttered, swinging down from the saddle. His boots crunched against gravel. The gelding's right leg trembled, a raw wound streaked with blood dark against the dust, caked hide. It wasn't the first time Ethan had seen injury on the trail. This land was merciless, and a horse was often the difference between life and death. He crouched low, brushing sweat from his brow. "Damn coyotes must have spooked you. Or maybe you caught yourself on a jagged rock." The horse whinnied softly, eyes wide with pain. Ethan checked the leg again, frowning. The gash wasn't from rock. The cut was clean, too sharp. It looked like a blade had done it. Ethan's gut tightened. The nearest town, Dry Creek, was 3 hours back, and the trail ahead wound deeper into outlaw country. He'd meant to deliver cattle papers to the sheriff, but fate had bled a different path beneath him. "All right, boy," he said, tying the reins loosely around his wrist. "We'll find shelter. Somewhere you can rest. Somewhere I can figure out what the hell's going on." They limped through dust and shadow, Ethan half dragging, half guiding the horse along the twisting foothill trails. Each step left a smear of red on the stones, marking a trail any half-witted tracker could follow. After an hour, the desert gave way to pine and granite. The air cooled, filled with the resinous bite of evergreens. Ethan spotted something through the trees. A curl of smoke rising, faint against the evening sky. "A cabin," he muttered. His horse flicked an ear, as if urging him forward. The cabin looked abandoned at first glance, logs gray with age, shutters sagging. But the smoke said otherwise. Someone lived here, or had, recently. Ethan's hand rested on the colt at his hip as he approached. "Hello in there," he called. His voice echoed off the trees. Silence. Only the creak of branches and the whisper of wind. He pushed open the door. Hinges groaned. The air inside was thick with wood smoke, stale whiskey, and something darker, iron sharp as rust and blood. The cabin wasn't empty. A man lay sprawled across the floor, chest soaked in crimson. Dead at least a day, maybe 2. Next to him, a rifle rested against a chair. Papers scattered across the table, edges curling with old candle wax. Ethan froze, every instinct on edge. His horse had led him here. But to what? He knelt by the corpse. The man was middle-aged, beard gone to gray, eyes wide in a death that had been violent. His shirt was torn where a knife had slipped between ribs. Murder, no doubt about it. Ethan's hand brushed the papers. They weren't ranch ledgers or letters home. They were maps, drawn by a careful hand, marking the canyons and gulches of the Sierra Madre. At the center, circled in red, was a single word: silver. Ethan's pulse quickened. Outlaws had been whispering for years about hidden silver veins in these hills, a mother lode that could make a man rich overnight. Men killed for less in the Wild West. But why had his horse led him here? Why this cabin, this dead man, this map? Behind him, the gelding whinnied nervously. Hoofbeats rustled outside. More than one horse, more than one rider. Ethan blew out the lantern and drew his Colt. The cabin door creaked open. A shadow filled the frame. Well, a voice drawled, low and dangerous. "Ain't this a surprise? Looks like we ain't the only one following the trail." The man who stepped in wore trail, dust on his boots and cold hunger in his eyes. 2 more followed, revolvers drawn. Outlaws, no mistaking. Ethan's mind raced. He was alone, cornered, horse half, lame outside. The dead man's map still on the table. "What do you want?" Ethan asked, steady but firm. The leader grinned, showing yellow teeth. "Same thing you want, rancher. Silver. And that paper you just touched." His men shifted, hands twitching on their guns. Ethan's finger curled around his Colt's trigger. He had 1 chance, maybe 2, before they cut him down. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky. Not storm, but gunfire from somewhere deeper in the trees. Shouts followed, riders approaching fast. The outlaws froze. "Damn it," their leader spat. "We ain't alone." The cabin erupted into chaos. Gunfire tore the night apart. Bullets punched through wood, splinters flying. Ethan dropped behind the table, firing blind through smoke and shadow. His horse screamed outside, hooves clattering. The outlaws cursed, returning fire. One fell, clutching his chest. Another staggered back, blood painting the wall. Ethan crawled toward the door, dragging the map with him. Outside, riders thundered into the clearing, 5 men, hard-eyed, rifles in hand. Their badges caught the lantern light. The law had arrived. "Sheriff," one of them barked. "There he is." But they weren't looking at the outlaws. They were looking at Ethan, their rifles leveled at his chest. "You're under arrest for murder," the sheriff growled. Ethan's blood ran cold. He raised his hands slowly, Colt slipping from his fingers to the dirt floor. The outlaws were gone, melted into the trees like ghosts. Only the sheriff's men remained, and their eyes held no mercy. "This ain't what it looks like," Ethan said, voice tight. But deep down, he knew. Whatever secret this cabin held, he'd just stepped into the middle of it. And it was going to swallow him whole. The steel bite of handcuffs clamped around Ethan McGraw's wrists as the sheriff's deputies shoved him toward the horses. The smell of gunpowder still lingered in the night air, smoke curling from the shattered cabin windows. Somewhere in the pines the outlaws had melted away, shadows riding deeper into the mountains. But it wasn't them the law had gone after. It was him. "You've got this wrong," Ethan growled, digging his heels into the dirt. "That man inside was already dead when I got here. My horse was hurt. I was just looking for shelter." The sheriff's lantern cast long shadows across his weathered face. Sheriff Colton Briggs had the look of a man carved from stone, his mustache silvered, his eyes cold as creek ice. "You expect me to believe that?" Briggs said flatly. "You sittin', pretty in the middle of a murder scene, gun in hand? Corpse on the floor." Ethan's jaw tightened. "The killers were here, Sheriff. I traded bullets with them myself." They slipped off into the trees. One of the deputies spat into the dirt. "Convenient story." Briggs tugged Ethan forward. "You'll tell it in Dry Creek. Behind bars." A ride down the mountain was a blur of moonlight and iron. Ethan's injured gelding limped behind, tied to a deputy's horse. The canyon opened wide to the desert plains, the stars sharp and endless above. Inside, Ethan's thoughts churned. That map, silver veins marked in red, burned in his memory. He hadn't even had a chance to hide it before the sheriff appeared. And now the paper sat folded in Briggs' pocket. The dead man in the cabin had been killed for it. The outlaws wanted it. Now the law had it, which meant trouble. Dry Creek was no more than a cluster of weathered buildings along a single dusty street: saloon, jailhouse, blacksmith, general store. Lanterns glowed in the windows, voices spilling from the Lucky Ace saloon, where cowboys and drifters drowned their wages. The sheriff dragged Ethan through the doors of the jail. The iron bars clanged shut with finality. "You'll get your say before Judge Holloway," Briggs said, slipping the map into his desk drawer. "Until then, you sit tight." Ethan gripped the bars. "That paper, what do you think it means?" Briggs' eyes narrowed. "I think it's motive enough for murder." The sheriff left him in the dark cell, lantern-like flickering through the cracks. Ethan sat back on the cot, anger coiled tight in his chest. He wasn't a killer, but someone wanted him to hang like one. The night dragged on, broken only by the shuffle of boots outside and the distant thrum of a piano from the saloon. Ethan's thoughts turned to the horse. His faithful gelding was stabled out back, tended by the blacksmith. Strange how the animal's injury had dragged him into this storm. Footsteps echoed in the hall. A figure appeared at his cell, face half shadowed beneath a wide hat. "McGraw," the voice whispered, feminine, low, urgent. Ethan rose. "Who's askin'?" The woman stepped closer, her features lit by the lantern glow. Raven hair spilled over her shoulders, and her eyes, dark as midnight, burned with something fiercer than fear. "My name's Elena Cortez," she said. "The man in that cabin was my father." Ethan's chest tightened. "Your father? Then you know I didn't." "I know." She cut in, sharp but steady. "I followed his trail. He was working that map, digging for the silver. Outlaws got wind of it. Sheriff Briggs too." Ethan frowned. "Briggs, he's the law." Or Elena's lips curled in bitter scorn. "In Dry Creek, the law wears two faces. Briggs wants the mine for himself. He'll pin my father's death on you and walk away rich." Ethan gripped the bars tighter. "You got proof of that?" She nodded toward the desk where the map lay hidden. "The proof is in his drawer. But you won't get near it in chains." Her hand slipped something between the bars, A small iron key. Ethan stared at it, then at her. Why help me? Because, if Briggs finds that mine, he'll bleed this land dry, she said, voice fierce. My father died for it. I won't let him win. And you're the only man standing in his way. Ethan closed his fist around the key. The iron bit into his palm like a brand. The jailhouse slept quiet as the desert night. The deputies dozed in their chairs, hats tipped low. Briggs was gone, likely at the saloon or with his men. Ethan worked the lock. The iron groaned, then gave. The cell door swung open with a whisper. Elena led him through the back door, shadows swallowing them whole. The gelding whickered softly from the stable, favoring his leg but eager to move. Ethan saddled up, pain or no pain. Elena mounted her own dark mare, her rifle slung across her back. Where to? Ethan asked. She looked toward the black horizon. To the canyon. To finish what my father started, and to prove Briggs for what he is. The desert night stretched wide before them, stars sharp as daggers. They rode hard, hooves drumming against the hardpan, breath clouding in the chill. Behind them, the jailhouse lantern flared. Voices shouted. A bell clanged. Briggs had discovered the escape. Ride. Ethan barked. They thundered across the flats, dust trailing like ghost smoke. A bullet whined past Ethan's ear. Another kicked up sparks from the rocks. Deputies gave chase, their silhouettes dark against the rising moon. Elena leaned low over her horse's neck. The riverbed? This way? They cut into a dry wash, shadows deep, the sound of pursuit muffled by canyon walls. Ethan's gelding stumbled but pushed on, blood marking the sand. At last they slowed, breaths ragged, horses lathered. The deputies' voices faded behind them. For the moment they were free. They made camp beneath a stand of cottonwoods. The riverbed dry save for a trickle of moonlit water. Ethan tended his horse's wound with strips of cloth, while Elena stoked a small fire. For a while, they sat in silence, the desert whispering around them. Finally, Ethan spoke. That map, where does it lead? Elena's eyes flickered in the firelight. To the Red Rock Canyon. My father swore there was silver enough to change a man's fate, but he also believed it was cursed. Every man who chased it met violence. Ethan stared into the flames. Maybe some things ain't meant to be found. Her gaze hardened. And let Briggs claim it. Let him bury my father's blood with it. No, we ride at dawn. Ethan nodded slowly. The outlaw gang, Briggs' corruption, the map. Every path led to Red Rock Canyon, and it would all end there. He lay back against the saddle, staring at the stars, the taste of dust still on his tongue. The West was a land of secrets and blood. But come morning, he'd have to face both.